Hello comrades, welcome to Fashionology. Today we're going to talk about Valentino Garavani as we're witnessing a monumental comeback. Many attribute their resurge of the brand to the creative genius of Alessandro Michele, but it's actually also thanks to the strategic leadership skills from Jacopo Venturini, who is the CEO over the last 5 years, and they work together perfectly. But as always in these episodes, I will take the story from the beginning. On May 11, 1939, Mauro Garavani had to rush his wife to the nearest health center because her waters broke. So she gave birth to Valentino, who she named after Rodolfo Valentino. Rodolfo Valentino was a super famous Latin American actor who was very sexy and very hot and famous during the 20s and 30s. All of Italian women were obsessed. So yes, she named her son after her favorite actor. He showed very early signs that he will have a creative work because since he was in the elementary school, he started working with his aunt. After he graduated, he went to the Voghera in Milan to study in the Santa Maria Sketch Institute. And at the same time, he had an epiphany. He was like, why not picking up some French while I'm studying? And he did that. French was classy, it was elegant, but it was also super useful for people who wanted to be involved in the fashion industry. In fact, with some help of his parents, he flew to Paris and he studied at the École des Beaux-Arts. It's worth noting that Parisians were fiercely protective of the fashion industry. They did not like Italians much. They believed there were not many opportunities to go around, so why Italians coming here and they're claiming our space essentially. So a huge rivalry started, like Coca-Cola versus Pepsi or MasterCard versus Visa. So Italians and Parisians were not getting along very well. Parisians knew everything about haute couture and the finesse in the clothing and the blink and all that, but Italians had unparalleled craftsmanship and they were super innovative, claiming their space in the fashion world. After his studies, he participated in a competition won both by Yves Saint Laurent and Karl Lagerfeld, who was hosted by the Wool International Union, and he won the prize. The prize of that competition, it was a spot in the creative team of Jean Deschênes' atelier, and he took that job. In this job, he encountered something very familiar, I believe, to all of us, an annoying colleague. But after a couple of months, they got along super well together and they became best friends. That guy was Guy Laroche. In 1957, Guy Laroche opened his own brand, and the first thing he thought to do was to go to his best friend, work best friend, and be like, look, Valentino, you are a great designer, your mind is so creative, let's open it together. So the initial reaction from Valentino was like, are you crazy? This is not happening. We're too poor for this, we can't do this. So he kept working on Jean Deschênes. Now, Jean Deschênes takes couture very seriously, so it was a very demanding job. He was on summer holidays in Saint-Tropez for a couple of days at some point, and he requested 5-6 extra days of holidays that got denied. So he quit it straight away. In 1959, he said yes to Guy Laroche and they started working together in Guy Laroche's brand. After 7 or 8 years that he was already abroad, he was tired. He was like, okay, I need to go back to my hometown and open my own fashion house. And please don't feel super poor at this point. It's not you, it's that Valentino was rich to begin with. So he came back to Rome. He opened his own brand with the help of his father and a business partner. So they put together some money and he built his own brand at Via Condotti. Valentino wanted his atelier to be very different than the other Italian fashion houses. Yes, they did have the Italian finesse, but Valentino wanted something more like a maison of couture, although he was not a recognized couturier at the time. So for his first show, he flew all the models from Paris and he launched his first collection, and it was absolutely amazing and it was an instant hit. And this was actually the collection we had our first red gown, which was the crimson red in drawing terms, and that was inspired by a singer. When he was a teenager, he was in Barcelona with his family for a vacation and he went to see an opera. The opera singer was wearing a maxi gown, velvet, in crimson red. So he was inspired by the passion of the singer and he created this crimson red line. I am so in love with these little fashion stories. But anyhow, all the fashion gods were in agreement, the stars were all aligned, and Elizabeth Taylor happened to be in Rome at the time. She was filming Cleopatra. You remember her dripping in gold, the embodiment of glamour, her winged eyeliner. You all remember Elizabeth Taylor doing Cleopatra, right? So she was there and she actually wanted to purchase a few items, like a few sets for like everyday occasions from Valentino, but she actually ended up buying a white dress, which she wore in the premiere of Spartacus. Now, if you're over 30, guilty, you know that Spartacus was a massive hit. Everybody watched it, and it's now a cult movie, but back then it was a very important event. It was directed by Stanley Kubrick. So indeed, Elizabeth Taylor was wearing Valentino on that premiere, and that established Valentino as a big name in fashion. The story does not end here, because at the end of July, right before his summer holidays, he goes out to meet a few friends at Café de Paris in Via Veneto. There he meets a boy, Giancarlo. Giancarlo offered to give him a ride home, so they were roaming together the streets of the Eternal City in his Fiat 500 in red. That's all me. I have no idea what color was the car, but let me just build a romantic movie in my head, okay? So they met and they fell in love. And after just a week, as all as peasants, they went to Capri with their families for, you know, the summer holidays. So they reunited in Capri and they were inseparable. But as in romantic movies, exactly, life happens. So Valentino needed to go back to his sewing machines. Giancarlo was on his second year studying architecture, so he had to go back studying. They kept in contact, but they had to go separate ways. After a while, Valentino found himself in a very difficult situation. He was a great designer, but he was a very bad businessman. It's a pattern in the fashion world. You can't just be a great artist and really good with money at the same time. So he blew all the money off. So he nearly filed for bankruptcy. He was about to sell the brand to another name. And then Giancarlo called him and said, babe, don't worry. I'm going to come down and live and work with you in Rome. So that's what happened. Keep in mind, Giancarlo was not poor himself as well. So Giancarlo came back to Rome and he said to Valentino, okay, now we're going to be using your beautiful creative mind and we're going to fly up to Florence and we will make a collection that everyone is going to talk about and it will be perfect. And that's exactly what happened. From that collection, a friend of him happened to introduce him to Jackie Kennedy, Jackie O. She was the first lady at the time. She wanted to purchase a few things, but she didn't really have time. So later in the year, they had an event in New York, which again, she really wanted to attend, but first lady business, you know, she had a very packed schedule, so she couldn't. And Valentino said, okay, she is the first lady of America. I'm gonna make it happen. So she grabbed a fashion stylist, a hairstylist, a makeup artist, a model that looked like Jackie a little bit, and took everyone, this whole team. He went straight to her hotel at Fifth Avenue and he showcased the garments there. She bought 6 of them. She was a bit unlucky because 2 weeks later, her husband got assassinated in Texas. She did not really have time to enjoy these garments. She had to wear black throughout the mourning period. By the mid-70s, most designers were doing bohemian, flowing, long dresses, so Valentino decided he will go again the opposite way. Elaborate jackets with extreme padding, and he paired them with vintage-inspired accessories. He had a way presenting them on his shows, though, that it was very, very desirable. He made them look so desirable, especially for his American audience when he became really famous. Valentino's mindset was very simple. A life should be a perpetual vacation. So you would find him in a dock in Saint-Tropez, in a yacht docked in Saint-Tropez, or in Paris, in Karl Lagerfeld's entourage. He would be out and about with Princess Margaret, with Jacquio, with celebrities. He was the embodiment of Dolce Vita. The 80s was a decade where Valentino was not impressed by the aesthetics or the trends. He found them somewhat tacky. It was not his cup of tea. His career was going great, and I don't want to delve more into the design part of it, but I want to talk about another Valentino brand. Sometimes when you're out and you find friends and you find bags online, you see that some Valentino bags only cost 100 quid and some other Valentino bags cost around 2,000 quid. And you're like, what the hell is going on? So in 1952, Mario Valentino, a guy from Naples, he was a leather craftsman. So he created this brand called Valentino that was selling leather goods. So during the 80s, they signed this agreement that stipulates which Valentino logo each can use. And that's changing by region, by country, and by bag. So imagine if you have a small Valentino bag that you can't write Valentino Garavani, like the whole logo does not fit on that bag, then you are allowed to use only Valentino, only the first name. But everything was fine. They coexisted together for 40 years. But then in 2019, everything changed, where Mario Valentino filed the lawsuit against Valentino Garavani for lost profits, false advertisement in both Milan and America, so they needed to find a solution. It got even more complicated because Valentino Garavani have so many different lines. They have Valentino, Valentino Red, R-E-D, Valentino Rome. So which logo should they use? In the capitalistic world we live in, it's very, very difficult to find balances like we used to do in the 80s. So everyone is trying to get out of this labyrinth. In the 90s, Valentino focused more in arts. He opened the Valentino Academy, but he was still designing great pieces. Do you remember the iconic Christy Turlington aubergine dress, a translucent long lace dress that you are perfectly fine to wear today? Also, he created the China collection in 1994 with the amazing hats, but in 1998 he decided to sell the brand, but he still kept his place as the main designer, as the creative director. He sold the brand for $300 million. From that point until today, this company has changed 3 or 4 hands, but I'll tell you, in 2012, Maihula Investments bought the company for $700 million. And I will stop with the math because it's boring, I know, and I'll come back to it later. Back to our boy. On September 4th, 2007, he announced his retirement. So the next year, on the 23rd of January, we have the last fashion show of Mr. Valentino Clemente Ludovico Garavani. It was in Paris, and everyone was there. When I say everyone, I mean everyone. Uma Thurman, Anna Wintour, Eva Herzigova, you name it. And all the pieces, all his legacy were displayed beautifully in that show. At the end, when he came to do his final catwalk, the whole room stood up and cheered for him because he is truly leaving us a huge legacy. The question was very, very obvious. If not Valentino, then who? So they decided to hire a creative duo, Grazia Chiuri and Pierpaolo Piccioli, to be the creative directors of the brand. And they worked together for many, many years. They created beautiful collections, Maria especially with shoes and bags. She is a genius in Valentino. So in their collection, 2010 and 2011, she launched the Rockstars. The Rockstars were a sensation. It was a huge trend. everyone had a pair, but they are now considered to be a bit outdated. Piccioli tried and he made great different collections over the next couple of years, and he recreated these shoes with bigger studs, but I still think they are a bit outdated. I believe that Alessandro Michele will bring them back and he will make them a timeless and amazing Valentino classic, but not yet. Not yet. I think they're a bit outdated. They worked really well together for 7-8 years until Maria Grazia Chiuri moved to the creative direction of Dior. It is super, super important because this is the first female creative director the brand had in the 70 years of their legacy. So well done. Last year, all of a sudden, Piccioli resigned. Not exactly all of a sudden, because the brand was saying we need a new creative view because the last trend, the last huge hit was the rock studs. So remember that I told you in 2020, Gucci's Giacomo Venturini moved from Kering to the brand Valentino, and he was working with Alessandro Michele for 12 years in Gucci. They worked really, really well. So for me, it was kind of a no-brainer that he would pick Alessandro Michele to come to Rome and be the creative director of Valentino. Now, keep in mind that Alessandro Michele has never done haute couture before. Yes, he was amazing in Gucci. Gucci is Alessandro Michele at this point, but he has never made haute couture. Alessandro will become his own episode, but let's talk about Valentino with Alessandro. So, Spring-Summer 2025, he launched 100 looks and got people start talking about the Guccification of Valentino. Valentino was never a maximalist. He was never a minimalist. He was like the common denominator around all his collections was romance, and I could see the romance throughout the whole collection. I did not love the bags particularly because they were a bit muted, but there were a lot of outfits that I found that had clear inspiration of Valentino archive pieces, and I thought he would go there, and I just liked the collection overall. Now, the haute couture collection, that is another story. In the haute couture collection, we saw a lot of archive pieces again, but the proportions. The clothes were humongous. They were huge. Like, there were skirts that could fit. It was like a tent that sleeps 6 people in a camping night. I don't know. It was like huge. And I'm all about avant-garde, but Valentino is not. So it's a different thing to say there is a large skirt and it's a comme des garçons, but it's a different thing if it's a Valentino. So I will cut him some slack because it was his very first collection. I did not particularly love the romance with the contrast of the visuals. He had like a very dark background. I will put a picture around here so you can see it, and it wasn't really working with the clothes for me. That's my tiny little humble opinion. But I truly admire Alessandro Michele. I really love him as a designer. I loved what he did in Gucci. So I'm super excited to see what he's gonna do in Valentino in the next couple of years. And that was my little Valentino episode. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please hit the subscribe button, like, and leave a comment for the algorithm. If you like it too much, share it, because everyone needs to learn about Fashionology. Thank you very much. I'll see you